Hello everyone and welcome to Tyro Chess. In this video I'm going to talk about how I made 1700 on chess.com and Blitz. So in the last video I talked about how I made 1600 and I gave a few tips that I used. So the first one was to balance your speed and thinking, that is not spend too much time. The second one is to improve your openings because it helps you not to spend too much time. The third one was improve your general chess knowledge. If you can spot tactics better, generally just become a better player. That will help your rating. And the fourth one is to play more games. So those are the four things that I did, and I went into that in the last video. Now in this video, I'm going to talk about how I made 1700. So in terms of the general, I would say guidelines, I think it's more of the same thing. You just have to get better at the full stuff that I've talked about right there, which I highlighted in the previous video. So in this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of my games, my most recent games, where I'm around 1700-ish. Here I'm 1703. And in the last game, my rating is, let's see, 1723 before the game. So right now my rating is 1730 something. So these are the last 30 games that I played on chess.com. So the video is going to be quite long because I feel like just talking about tips isn't as helpful at this point because I already did that in the last video. Also, going through the games at least will get an idea of how I play and how I think. So if anyone is watching, it might help them, it might help you guys, and also it might help me as well to see where I go wrong. Another thing is I've noticed that making these videos also helps me with my chess because I get to review my games, which I don't do most of the times when I play. It's like you play a casual game, you finish, you play another one. So this gives me the opportunity to go over my games as well. And yeah, anyone who has a repertoire similar to mine is definitely going to benefit from this way more. But even if we play different openings, it should be just as instructive. So, just to recap, the main tips are to balance your speed and thinking, improve your openings, general chess knowledge, and to play more games. And here, these games are 3 plus 2. I imported them from chess.com and I'm using a Lichess study. In case you're getting confused, this is in my rating on Lichess. And yeah, so the first game was in Italian, so know your openings. Here I generally play knight f3. My opponent goes for the main line, which is knight c6, and at this level you should know at least like the first 6 moves of theory. It generally helps because you don't want to spend too much time thinking. Bishop c4 is the main move, the Italian. Bishop c5 played by my opponent, and here I played the main move, which is c3. My opponent plays knight f6, the main move, attacking the pawn, and now I defend with d3. So here we're following the main line, d6, and here I went for bishop b3 because I didn't want to allow any tricks with knight a4. I know that generally in the Italian, after d6, you want to look out for this move because it can win your bishop. So dropping it back is always useful because you can always slide here. But in this position, it doesn't work because if the knight were to go here, there are a number of things that I could do. One of the easiest things is just take there, and this is just a clean fork. And if our opponent tries to do the same, we're already castled, so our position is way better. So yeah, but nonetheless, I went for bishop b3, and they play h6, and I just fill up my knight, and I was very happy to see this move because I know that in the Italian, generally the bishop being here is also a good idea because it attacks this bishop. But when the bishop is here, it just helps us because I want to go for this maneuver, right? And after h3, when the bishop goes back here, and when my knight is on g3, it'll be attacking the bishop. So that just helps me. So I castle. My opponent keeps playing slowly. This helps. This is a retreat square for the bishop because at some point I'm going to want to play d4 when I'm ready. And here I just play h3 and rook e1, the normal moves. My opponent reroutes the knight. This is also a normal maneuver in the Italian. But here, the computer is giving me a bigger advantage, and I guess it's because this bishop is kind of misplaced, and I'm getting a comfortable position here. So my opponent continues to play very slow moves. I don't know, maybe they're aiming for d5, but they're just giving me time to make my moves. And now, virtually all my pieces are developed except for this bishop. And the way I play the Italian, there are some lines where you go for an early g5, but I go for the general ones. And here, generally speaking, the bishop is fine here. You can just keep it here until you have to develop it somewhere because it's not really clear where we want to put it. So I get to play d4, takes, and now I just have a nice center. So this gives me an advantage. And my opponent goes back. Um, they could also go here to justify this h6 move. If the bishop attacks my rook, I can push my rook there or even play bishop d2 is fine. So here my opponent goes back and the computer wants me to go knight h4. It's like go knight h4, attack this bishop, but I play bishop d2, developing my last piece. I didn't know what to do there. And notice how this is the 15th move and not much time has been spent by me. And my opponent also has uh, some decent amount of time. So you don't want to be spending too much time because that helps in the end game, right? So here I just develop my bishop some more. Of course, I allow some counterplay, but I still thought I was slightly better. And oftentimes in Blitz, I'm more than comfortable. Like playing with just a slight advantage, I don't mind it. But maybe I should have gone for this right away. At the very least, if my opponent has to push the bishop, and now after this, takes, the knight has to move. Oh, even this pawn is hanging. Can I take that? Wait, what's going on? It's white's turn, isn't it? Oh, sorry, that's my own pawn. I'm getting confused because I'm recording. For some reason, my mind isn't working. But yeah, this is a nice position for me. I get to develop my queen, but then I wouldn't really know how best to develop my knights. So I went with what felt natural. That's another important thing in Blitz. And also, if there are any higher rated players watching this, leaving some tips for everyone in the comment section is generally helpful as well. So yeah, here I just go for e4 because I can, e5 rather. And now this is just takes. My opponent plays this a bit passively. They could have just taken the pawn, like whatever I take with, they should be somewhat fine. I can go for the same thing, but black is comfortable. If the bishop moves at some point, the knight gets in the game. But here my opponent decides to move their knight, which is okay. And I put my knight in the center because in the center the knight has more squares to attack. And my opponent makes the mistake of taking my bishop. And this is a bad move because the one weakness I have in this position is the isolated queen's pawn, right? It's an asset because it allows dynamic play. That's what they say. Like, if you have an isolated queen's pawn, you have a lot of dynamic play, but the side that doesn't have the isolated queen's pawn just wants to trade off pieces, and not in this way, and then this pawn becomes weak. So if my opponent manages to trade off some pieces and blockade this pawn so that it's not able to move forward, which is why this knight is very useful here, we have a game. But my opponent decides to take, and now they fix my one weakness, and as you can see, my evaluation just went up. So I was surprised with that move, and here they just straight up blundered a fork because after this, there's this tactic with knight takes, queen takes, and rook takes knight. So here I'm just up a piece. So tactical awareness is also something that helps generally at this level. You don't have to be really good at tactics, but just a little. Being able to recognize some minor patterns helps. So yeah, my overall goal right now is to get to 2,000 at the end of the year, by the end of the year at least. So halfway through the year would be like ideal. That would be nice, but the end of the year I feel like is more practical because I also have other things to do and I only play chess casually. But moving on, here I'm okay giving up a pawn because I have a piece. I'd rather get rid of the pin. So I move my rook here, my queen here. I'm attacking this square even more and here and here. So my opponent takes. I take there first just to attack the queen, and after takes, I trade off the pieces, and yeah, this is just a straightforward victory. My opponent blunders here because after they move, I have this. They cannot take my rook because the pawn is bent, and here my opponent resigned. So that was a nice game. I played multiple games with this person apparently, which is what I'm saying here, because I just imported my last 30 games. And since my general goal is to improve in chess, I don't really go for hacks. Like I once heard somebody say that you wanna pick some tricky openings, and once you win a game, you don't wanna go for a rematch because now they know your opening. Like if you wanna get better, you don't wanna rely on tricks. You wanna actually be at that skill level. So I accepted a rematch, and this was one d4 d5, and my opponent plays g3, which is the Catalan. Now, unfortunately for me, the Catalan is one of those openings that I haven't really studied. After this game, I did look at a few lines like Bishop e7, which is the closed Catalan, but I didn't really know how to play the Catalan here. Although that's not why I lost this game. So the main line is Bishop e7, Bishop g2, and here I'm supposed to castle. And here white is supposed to castle. And after this move, Queen c2, apparently you're supposed to play c5 because the idea is if they takes, you just have this check and we're getting the pawn back, and here black gets a comfortable position. So I didn't know that, and I ended up taking here. And now the computer wants me to play like this. I don't like that move because the knight comes in, and then, okay, at least I get to attack the queen, but after the queen moves, like, my position is just passive. But this is usually what you get in the Catalan. It's very dynamic. So instead of that, I went a6, but here my opponent also had knight e5, the same idea, restricting the movement of this pawn. But my opponent played this slowly, and I ended up getting a comfortable position. As a Sicilian player, I'm very happy to get bishop b7 uh, and c5, right? And here I don't even understand why I went for b4, because I think I went for this because I saw some video about Caruana explaining a game he played against Magnus in the World Water Champions Chess Tour, and there was a point where Magnus ignored the pawn and just pushed it. I don't know. But I thought this would be fine for me. But normally I would have just gone for this. And if takes, takes. I was worried that this pawn would be isolated. But this pawn has a partner. And this pawn, right? This pawn can always defend the pawn. Also, this pawn becomes isolated, but so is my opponent's pawn. So I think I would have just maybe even taken if I might have even just taken if I realized that I have the isolated pawn, but so does my opponent. So, but instead I pushed the pawn, which wasn't bad. It was okay, especially after my opponent's next move. Here I developed the knight, and now I just get a comfortable game because I get to play c5. And as a Sicilian player, also in queen's pawn positions, if you can get c5, you're very comfortable because now the pieces can come out. You can take with the knight, you can take with the bishop, and you're no longer cramped. And the computer evaluation actually gives me an advantage. So takes. And here, believe it or not, this was actually a mouse slip. I was touching my knight. I saw that my opponent was up on the clock, and for some reason, instead of taking, I was thinking to myself, can I put my knight in the center or something? And for some reason, somehow, I ended up mouse slipping. Like, this isn't a move that anyone would play, so. And that just gave me a worse position. Here, I could have just taken the bishop, let's say, and if takes, I have knight takes, I also have rook takes, and I'm way better here because I've solved all my issues. But unfortunately, I mouse slipped, and now I have trouble. I have difficulties getting the pawn back with a comfortable position. Here, here, I didn't see this. I saw that my knight was hanging. So maybe if I had seen that, I would have taken with the queen, but I ended up taking with the knight, and yeah, my opponent developed their knight, and I got myself pinned in a few moves. So I just lost my knight and eventually lost the game. But I'm gonna blame this on the mouse slip because I'm gonna blame myself for uh, getting mouse slipped. I actually had this move here, which I didn't see. Well, this is kind of cool because they don't have this pawn because their their king is pinned. So I was talking about tactics here, and here I missed the tactic, but I also only had 17 seconds on the clock, so I missed that, but then I ended up getting checkmated in a few moves. So that was the second game. Um, Third game, I accepted a rematch against the same opponent, 1700 as you can see, and my opponent decides to go for a Sicilian, and I play the knight of myself, so I'm not afraid of Sicilians because, yeah, I'm sort of familiar with some of the patterns, but here we go for these lines, and here my opponent has a bunch of options. G6 is what most people play online these days. I don't know, maybe it's because of Daniel Naroditsky, if you know who that is, content creator and grandmaster. And there's the Taimanov with Queen C7, and this is the Kalashnikov, and this leads to the Sveshnikov. So these are some of the things that black could go for. And it's helpful to know those openings. Like I said, the second tip to improve is to know a bit of your openings. Also, if you're not a fan of knowing some theory, there's a line here. Instead of going for the open lines, after knight c6, you can go bishop b5, and this is known as the Rosolimo. And you have less, here black has less options. You're basically playing a Rosolimo. Most likely black is going to play g6, or the other line is with e6. So, but generally I learned that the best way to combat the Sicilian is to go for the open lines, so I like to go for this. My opponent here plays the accelerated dragon, and here we're just in the main line. To protect this pawn, you play bishop e3. Unlike the normal dragon, I will say that playing knight c3 here loses some of the advantage because I think black gets an opportunity to play an early d5 in some lines. So here the main move is c4 and bishop e3. Now knight c6, knight c3 rather. Bishop e2 is the main line. This just prevents any craziness along this diagonal, and it also develops the bishop. And now here, these moves are the moves that I'm making are the moves that are generally played. The main line here is you're supposed to start with castles. Let's see, castles, and then this is how the main line goes. Okay, so those are the main line moves, but this move is played generally. And at some point, I might want to play king h1 to get away from the pin. So I mixed up the move order, but here it's not bad at all because I'm not punished for that in any way. It'll transpose. So here I played, after a6, I played f3. I just like to get that out of the way because I have lost some games because of delaying this move. And then here I just castled. And here I forgot that queen d2 was actually one of the main things. So I ended up not playing it, and yeah, here my position is just solid. I remember that my rook belongs in b1. At times I've put it on c1 in some games, but because I didn't know what to do, and also because it feels more natural, like at some point if this opens up, I want my rook to be on c1, but the other rook can come here. So at least in this game I remembered. And here my opponent is... Okay, in this opening, let me just explain that the way I understand it in my 1700 mind, remember, so uh, it might not be the most accurate, but black gets some quick development, unlike most Sicilians, and at the cost of space, because white gets a bunch of space. We have all this space here, and this c pawn controls a bunch of squares, right? The only thing that's uncomfortable for white in this position is like this bishop, because it's in the normal sense, it's known as a bad bishop because all the pawns are on light squares, and my bishop is also on light squares, so it's locked in. It's kind of in jail. But anyways, aside from that, I just decide to overprotect this pawn. So ignore the engine. I'm keeping it on because I'm not a grandmaster or any titled player, but generally it's hard to play engine moves all the times. Even grandmasters don't do that. But here I saw that okay, there's a nice square here. I play queen d2 first and I put my knight there. So here, I feel like with this move, black kind of rushed, because if you remember the main lines, like the knight is exchanged here, and so here it looks active, but the knight doesn't really do anything here. So in case you're wondering why the evaluation is so high, at some point I could even kick it out with f4. So I bring my knight back here because I didn't see what it was doing there, but the computer wanted me to just develop the rook, so maybe I should have done that. So we trade there, and now I played this move. And the idea of this move is I was trying to win the knight because this pawn controls these squares. The knight has no squares, right? So if I can play f4, the knight is trapped. My opponent, of course, spotted that. They played that move, f5, and then I play f4, chase away the knight anyways, and now I defend the pawn. The computer was like says I should develop my knight. It's fine with giving up this pawn, but I was like, you know what, I'm gonna maintain my slight advantage. And here I decided to bring my rook into the game and trade this way. And now, after a while, I know that I'm gonna get a pass pawn. So this, I actually used to struggle with pass pawns at a lower level. I would get a pass pawn and then I'd end up just losing it at some point for no compensation. But at this point, at least, I'm much more comfortable playing with pass pawns because I understand some of the dynamics a bit better. But anyways, here my opponent pushes the pawn and I took. The computer wants me to just push it forward and say, okay, now this pawn is, now I stay with this pass pawn. This gives up some of my advantage because this is the remaining pass pawn, but it's not a very good pawn. But the reason why I went for that is I wanted to get the pawn, so now I can get this pawn as well. And here I blundered. Remember, at the beginning I said that usually you want to play king h1 to avoid a pin. But here, after moving the bishop back, where did I move the bishop back? I think I wanted to put my knight on that square. I was forked and now I'm losing the bishop. The beautiful thing about Sicilians is that the positions are very dynamic, and as you can see, we're very close on the clock, so anything can happen. So you don't want to resign at this level because the king's safety is always questionable. At least I have this pawn. This rook isn't yet in the game, so I kept on playing. And here, I'm playing quick moves. I bring my knight into the game. I bring my queen into the game, and here I spotted that I could at least park my knight here. And I'm overprotecting this pawn, because the moment I lose this pawn, I lose the game. So here, put my knight there, and here my opponent blundered. So, because I get this move. Now I'm attacking the knight, and after the knight moved, I push the pawn, and the rook has to defend the pawn. So this takes, I get this check, right? Now I'm gonna win the piece back, and I take. Now, I'm winning the piece back, and I have this nice passed pawn here. So my opponent went there, and here I forked the queen and the rook. The computer wins this move, but I'll probably just move my rook elsewhere. But he took like that, thinking he's attacking my queen as well. But here I get to take the queen, and after he takes my queen, I take his rook, and I'm better. So that was a nice little game, and as you can see, at the end of the game here, my time, I'm way ahead of my opponent on the clock. So these days I try to be mindful, unless my opponent plays a very surprising opening. I try not to be so low on the clock because it generally helps in these time scrambles. Alright, so this is another game. I played against the same person who challenged me to another rematch, and so this was a Sicilian.
Hey, what's going on, guys? So my initial
Okay,
plan
sorry
was
for
just
that. Right, sorry about that. I have a bunch of tabs open, so in my OBS sometimes when I posted something, it goes to another browser window for some reason when I use the shortcut key. But anyways, this was another Sicilian, this was the Moscow. And since I played the Knight off, there's so many things that white could do against the Knight off. There's so many lines. And the line that I learned against the Moscow when I first started playing was Bishop D7. And I actually had it confused because I thought that after bishop takes, queen takes, you're supposed to go for g6, like white castles, and you go for g6. But apparently that's not the theory, so I'm just realizing that now. that I had it all mixed up in my head because I remembered that most of the times when you're trying to play the knight off and white does something unorthodox, G6 systems are usually the way to go. For example, or maybe I'm remembering it that way because of the Grand Prix attack. But anyways, my opponent plays bishop b4. I block with my bishop. The main line is actually, oh, turns out the main line is bishop d7. But you can also block with the knight, and apparently this is supposed to be more combative. But I'm used to this, so that's what I went for. And here I didn't know what to do. I should have maybe just developed my knight and be like, okay, you can take my knight. I'll be fine. But for some reason, I decided to attack the bishop. And after takes, I took with my queen, and according to the computer, I'm a bit worse, but it's close to equal, and I'm fine with this position. So my opponent tried to attack me in the center, but I was like, okay, I just ignored them because even if they take, I take with my bishop. So now I develop the knight, I develop my bishop, takes, and since I was surprised in the opening, I was more than comfortable going for an equal position. So I knew that this position must be equal because I've resolved my issues on the queen side. I've developed all my pieces, and I'm gonna start attacking on the queen side. So here I castle. No, I didn't castle. I played b4 right away. And the main reason why I did this is I like to, in blitz, sometimes when your opponent sees this, at this rating, people get intimidated a bit. So, but here my opponent just attacks from the king side relentlessly. They attack my knight, I go back, and even though I lost the pawn, I sort of understand at this point that in Sicilian, since the positions are so dynamic, I'm more than happy to have my king in the center, especially since I get this, right? I'm gonna get the pawn back. My rook is now active. So the disadvantage of getting the pawn is now my rook is active. And if we can trade queens, my king is gonna be close to the center, and I'll be fine. So here my opponent goes here, there, but now we just trade off the pieces. And now I'm trying to, why did I play this move? I'm not even sure, but I guess I'm trying to bring my rook into the game. Maybe I should have gone for the queen trade, like I said, because my king is in the center. But I went here, my opponent attacks my bishop, and here I go back. They go there, the computer wants me to go here, and I guess I should have, because if they take, now I get to improve my pawn structure as well. So that's an idea that I've seen multiple times, and hopefully I'll be able to replicate that in the next game. But here I took, and the computer wants me to go here, but I don't want any of that to prevent the rook from coming in, so I just go in the center. I'm like, okay, fine. The rook can't even go here because the square is covered, and the knight, more importantly, can't fork my queen and my king because the bishop has the square covered. So this bishop is doing a very good job of defending on that diagonal. And here, of course, my opponent ended up blundering on one move, and just like that, the game was over. And this match ended 3-1 because we played 4 games. I offered them another rematch since that's what we were doing, but they didn't want any of that, so that was the end of that. Now, this was the other game that I played, e4, e5, knight f3. Generally speaking, I'm very comfortable in the Italian. And here the main line is, there's d3, which is what most people at this level play. They play d3 and they're like, okay, we'll just play a normal game. And here, the main move is bishop e7, and this is known as I think it's the modern bishop's opening. Here, basically, black gets, I think, a better version of like, it sort of resembles something that would come out of a Spanish, right? A Ruy Lopez, but it's slightly better for black because they get to play the c5 move. And yeah, I still have some of my issues to solve on the queen side with my knight, and this is more equalish, even though white is always slightly better. But so to combat that, usually, that's why the main line is knight here. You're sort of attacking. This is called the knight attack. And if you're below like 1200 or 1300, you might want to go for this because sometimes your opponent doesn't even realize that there's a fork here. So the main move here is d5, and the position gets complicated. Like there's all these moves, and here white can even play like this because after this the rook is hanging. So even though the computer says the position is just equal. But instead, I'm trying to play this more positionally, especially since it splits. I don't want to get into any complications in these lines because I haven't played the knight attack in a very long time. Okay, but here we transpose into a normal Italian, and here I'm just playing normal move c3. If you remember the first game, we had a very similar position, right? Just that the move order was very different. Now the bishop goes back and I castle, they castle, I bring my knight out, so I'm going for the same thing. But here my opponent goes for this move with d5. And this is a very combative move. Basically, black is trying to... There's gonna be lots of pressure on this pawn, but black gets quick development for their pieces. So here, after takes, I play rook e1 naturally. And here, bishop g4 is the main move, right? I think. If I play h3, which is what I played, the computer wants me to go a4 and a5. Okay, I know that there's an opening where d5 is an option, but here I think the move order is slightly different. And I also felt during the game that I'm slightly better. The computer wants me to go this way, and okay, the computer doesn't even want me to play h3 because it sees that as a waste of time. But generally speaking, I do recognize this idea because after h3, when the bishop goes there, my knight goes on e4, and when it lands on g3, I'm attacking the bishop and it has to move again. So my opponent goes here, they play h3, and here, for some reason, they put their bishop back, right? You'd think they'll put their bishop here to maintain the pin, but now they're just losing a pawn. Because after takes, I take. They try to go for some tactics, but these tactics don't work here because I can block with my knight, and the knight also defends the rook. So, and now, to make matters worse, my opponent walked into a pin, and this is just losing. And for some reason, they didn't move their queen as well, and so here they resigned. So that was a nice little game. And let's see, what was the time usage like on this game? Like, didn't spend any time at all. This was just, I only spent time on this move because I was confused. I was like, what's going on here? Aren't I just better? But other than that, you can see that my time is just, there's no time usage here, which is one of the things you have to do in Blitz. Right away, move played instantly. So I'm kind of proud of the speed at which I played, or with which I played in this game. So my opponent offered me a rematch, and since I'm trying to improve my general chess skill, I'm one to decline a rematch, so I accepted it. So e4, c5, and here we are in this version of the Sicilian that I really dislike. Here the main move is knight c3, knight c6 rather, and after bishop there, you're supposed to go bishop d7, and the idea is after takes, you basically get a normal Sicilian. Here we get the doubled pawns, but I also get the open G file, if you guys can remember from one of the games that we played. And then the other game actually that I played against Gary, I even gave up the pawn for the open file, right? Because I'm not worried about the double pawns here because if anything, the double pawns can also provide shelter for my king. So in this position though, I played a6 for some reason, but also because I wasn't worried about this, to be honest, because I have no problems here. So here we played normally. I played e5 with some hesitation, but I thought after bishop e7, I'm gonna get bishop e6. So this isn't a big problem. And in my head, I thought the position was equal. And so here I'm attacking the pawn, like because I'm making use of the open file. They're defending, and now I'm putting more pressure on the knight in case the queen moves. And here I bring my rook in the center. The computer wants me to play h6 right away, but this is okay. So I attack the bishop, and now worried about this pawn, I decide to defend it. Also because there's a pin in case the knight moves, right? The bishop attacks my queen. And here I made a mistake. I didn't even consider pawn takes because I didn't think, first of all, I didn't think my opponent would play this move. At least I did recognize it, but I forgot that I had a pawn on c6. I should have taken with the pawn because after takes, I can just move and If I lose the pawn, I'm not really worried if I lose the bishop. The queen can't take the pawn, and I'll probably be able to play like d5 at some point and undouble my pawns or something. And I should be able to defend this position. But I ended up taking with the bishop. And after pawn takes, now I realized here actually that I can't take back because of the pin. So I had to play this move. Also, I remember these games much better because these were the last. I just took the last 30 games that I played on chess.com, so my memory is kind of fresh. And here I brought my queen in. I knew I was slightly worse here, and I tried to bring my queen over to the queen side, the king side, because that's where all the action is happening. Try to bring my knight into the game. I didn't want to go for this because I thought, okay, if we do trade, I don't want to have this isolated pawn here. Also, I'm losing this pawn, so I don't even understand what's going on there. So instead, I just put my knight there for defensive purposes in case they decide to play g5. Then I played this move, bringing my queen into the game, and my opponent took to my surprise. And I knew that this is better for me because now I fix my pawn structure, right? Pawns are stronger when they're together. So I also get this open a file for my rook. My opponent continues to push pawns, and I bring my rook over to the queen side. Now I put my rook here. It serves two purposes. Number one is to protect the king side. This is always a good move when your opponent is attacking on this side. And number two is potentially I can slide it over to the queen side. So we trade. I'm not worried about any of that. I don't want to allow the move g6 because, right, double pawns and then they take this pawn is weak. So I just played g6 myself. And here I thought I was fine. I'm gonna remaneuver my pieces and start attacking. And here my opponent made a very inaccurate move that does nothing, and now I just double my rooks. And I thought, okay, if they play rook a1, I'm just gonna win a pawn as well. So that's why this move is terrible because it weakens the pawn as well. And here we trade, and I'm much better in this game actually. I'm trying to bring my knight back into the game, so but then I knew when I was playing this game that the position was very tricky because it's very dynamic, right? I go for this, I try to trade off pieces, and here I'm fine. Now, as you can see from the result, I lost this game somehow because I started push my pawn even further. The computer wanted me, and here this was okay, but I missed a very key move, which is to trade off like this. Because the idea is okay, and also I must say that I was running low on the clock here. I only had 18 seconds. But apparently the key move is to trade off this pawn because once this pawn is traded off, I could take with whatever, even the knight. The computer prefers taking with the bishop. The pawn is still blockaded. The bishop can't take the knight, and my king gets closer. Right, I get to protect this pawn, and if my king manages to get here, I could even try to challenge this knight with my other knight. But unfortunately, I didn't recognize that that was the basically this was the winning idea, the only winning idea in this position. I didn't recognize that. I decided to develop my bishop. I was trying to prevent any ideas of like attacking the pawn, and here I ended up just being passive. And now, since my opponent's king is very active, this position is closer to a draw. Here, maybe I should have just kept my knight there, but I inched in closer to the position. And here I just blended mate in one. I didn't even know that it was mate when I made that move because I only had 4 seconds. But apparently I was surviving after this. And if I had more time, maybe I would have recognized that after check, pushes, and promotion, I can even just take and takes. And I'm not really worried because I have this pass pawn. I can attack him with check. If I manage to win this pawn, I might actually be the one playing for a win because if you trade knights, if you trade knights, my opponent won't have any other pawn, so it's just a draw. Worst case scenario, this should be a draw. But unfortunately, I didn't spot that. Also, even if I manage to lose my knight and both pawns, like at this level, bishop and knight endgame is very tricky. I tried to learn it at some point, then I've never used it on an actual game. So there's also the factor that even if your opponent learned it, they might have never used it in an actual game. And with blitz and a few seconds on the clock, they won't be able to get it right. So I wish I got that right. And yeah, I ended up losing this game because of that. And I think after this, I offered my opponent a rematch, but in typical fashion of most players in chess.com, they were just they were glad to get their revenge after losing the first game. And also, I'm pretty sure that they sensed that I might have won because this was basically a lucky win. Maybe they played. Okay, my opponent played good chess because it was very dynamic and they saved this position that was supposed to be losing. But my opponent rejected the rematch and I went on to play against somebody else. The username is Dr. Drankenstein. Okay, so here I'm white and I go for e4, c5. All right, this is just, and this is known as the Can Sicilian. At the time, though, I hadn't faced this in a very long time, so I didn't remember what the move was, right? So I was like, I went for the normal setup. I was like, wait a minute, this can't be right. In the knight off, you don't play a6 early. I still thought this was some sort of knight off, so I ended up playing d4, takes, takes. I played in the normal knight off fashion, and I thought to myself, right, I thought, okay, why is an early a6 wrong? It must be because maybe it allows like e5 or something. So here I should have recognized that I thought that the early a5 was wrong because it allows e5 or something, but then I should have recognized that here we've just transposed to a normal knight off, right? Or at least almost a normal knight off. After this, if my opponent plays d6, then yeah, this turns into a normal knight off. But anyways, I played this move and I just lost a pawn. And this was hard to get back into the game because I'm just a pawn down and black has a solid position. It's going to play d5. Basically, black has no weaknesses here. So I knew I was losing, but I tried to push, tried to attack, tried to go for some dynamic play, but I had nothing here, and this is just a clean loss because too many pieces drop off, and this game is basically over. I played on for a while for some reason, but this is basically game over, and I resigned here. Right. And then my opponent offered me a rematch, I think, or I offered it to them. I don't remember. But yeah, we played another game, and I remember this was like, I don't know, like 7 days ago or something. I wanted to play chess. I played against this guy, and then we ended up playing a very long match. So you see that the rest of the games, because I enjoy playing, I generally enjoy playing games against the same opponent. It's a good way to test your knowledge or your skill when somebody knows what openings you go for. But anyways, here my opponent goes for knight c6, I play knight c6, and this is the Grand Prix attack. And I know that against the Grand Prix you play g6. And here I was kind of surprised with the main move is knight f3. Okay, this felt strange to me. And then after bishop g7, there's bishop b4. And the idea is after this move, at the very least the knight is already controlling the square. So the opponent castles, takes, takes, a6, knight here, okay, b5, alright, whatever. But then here, my opponent went for the early bishop b5 without knight f3. So I went here naturally, still fine for them. And here I know that I wanted to get the knight for the bishop. The computer wants me to just like be like, okay, bro, like what do you have? Because now I also have ideas of going b5 and stuff like that. But Here I was okay getting the bishop pair, so that's what I went for. And here I played this move, d5. And I think I remember this from somewhere, like it's an idea in the Grand Prix, because well, I remember during the game I played this, and then I immediately recognized that after takes I can't take back because there's a fork. But then I thought, even if my opponent takes, so let's say takes, and they play a6 and they go back, like this pawn is weak because these are double pawns. I will eventually get to it. So I guess this isn't the worst idea. Also, another thing that I think I've improved at generally, because I said that the other tip, I think it's tip number 3, is to improve your general chess knowledge. At 1700, I'm much better at understanding some dynamics like giving up a pawn for more activity, which is something that at lower levels I didn't really understand. But yeah, here my opponent plays e5, and here the computer wants me to play like this. Oh, I didn't see this tactic. So I would have been winning because the knight is pinned to the king. So I didn't even spot that for some reason. And one of the reasons is that I thought that we were still in the normal Grand Prix. I didn't recognize that in the normal Grand Prix the knight plays on f3 first. So I just played normal moves. I'm like, oh, we're in the normal Grand Prix. Grand Prix. And again, the same tactic, I don't recognize it. So yeah, we ended up getting a standard position because I played it slowly, but I was okay playing here. And also the other positive thing is in the Grand Prix normally, like you don't get a6, b5 because you're in a hurry to get the immediate b6 and bishop b7. But here, at least I get some space on the queen side. The computer doesn't like it that much, but I'm okay with it. So yeah. Another thing is online. I've noticed that most people go for bishop c4 in the Grand Prix, which is why I'm a bit like this bishop g5 move was a bit confusing for me. But yeah, we're talking about knowing your openings, so one of the reasons I'm going over that. And here, my opponent goes for the attack, but there isn't really anything because like, you can just chase the knight back, or at least that's what I thought during the game. I forced a queen trade, and I'm very comfortable, given our rating disparity, to play an endgame. And here I just bring my rook into the game, drop my knight, and here I was happy to see this because that's just the pawn up. And yeah, another thing that I struggle with in these positions is I never know what pawn break I should go for. Because I'm pretty sure I've had a similar position in the Grand Prix. Like, how do I bring this bishop into the game? Like, there's pressure here. The computer just wants me to play rook e1, but this is just. And then bring the rook here. Like, this seems very, very tricky for me. And then bring the rook here. I guess this is the way to play it, so maybe I'll remember this next time. But here I'm trying to involve my bishop, so I play like this. But the moment my opponent pushed the pawn, I recognize that, oh no, now my bishop is out of the game. So I played like this. I was trying to get it in the game. So I guess this maneuver kind of worked. And now I'm trying to trade pieces because I'm a pawn and I don't like my position. Take the rook, and I remember this game was a bit of a struggle because of the dynamics of the position, right? I gave up some pawns and yeah, I go for and here I'm trying to create weaknesses, but he was coordinating, or they, because I don't know if it's a male or female, coordinating the rook and the queen very well. So I was trying to attack with my queen, but I wasn't doing much. I played this move just to overprotect the pawn. And one of the beautiful things about this position is the fianchettoed bishop. The fianchettoed bishop protects the king because you're not getting to h1 or h8 rather. So at least I had that in the position. Here I didn't play it the most accurately, but I'm going for something on the queen side because I was thinking that my opponent isn't checkmating me anytime. So here here. Okay, so I guess the problem here is I thought this doesn't work. Let's see, rook here, here, rook here. Like, what are my pieces doing there? To me, it feels like I just gave up a pawn, and I don't know why. But yeah, I'm trying to go for the queen trade because I'm not loving my position. Right, and I'm up material, even though the computer doesn't like this. And also notice that it's only 15 seconds on the clock. And now I'm trying to look for a plan, trying to play as quickly as I can, but this was bad. And I immediately spotted it, so I tried to trade queens, but then I went back and I spotted this move and I thought, okay, now this solves most of my problems because now I'm going for the trades, right? I'm more than happy to leave this pawn weak as long as my king is safe. And here I did spot the right move. I'm giving up the pawn, but if he takes with the rook, like I'm gonna get this, right? That's mate and one the rook. So I'm threatening checkmate, and lucky for me there was this move, and now this is game over because the knight is attacked 3 times. So that's one of the problems with the Sicilian is sometimes to win you have to suffer for a very long time, as I did in this game. So I won that game. Then we played another game, and apparently my opponent won this game because again I didn't recognize that it was a Khan Sicilian. And after knight f6, knight c3, e5 here, I was like, okay, maybe the reason why this is incorrect. Normally I would have just played maybe like knight c3, and this would have been some sort of okay. Here my opponent hasn't played d6 yet, so they have some extra moves, right? But I thought to myself, okay, maybe the reason why this is incorrect is because of the d5 square, right? I thought what my opponent was doing was incorrect, basically. But after this move, I remember that okay, I and this is something that I've actually won games like this from the black side or in position similar to this because you can't take because your knight is hanging. So here I'm like, what do I do? Okay, I decide to develop my bishop. It was the best move. I take, and I put my knight here. I'm trying to make the best out of a bad position. And here the computer wants me to. Now here I was afraid of all sorts of checks here because it's kind of tricky to go for c3 because of this pawn that's controlling it. And the computer wants me to just go here. Here it doesn't mind because if you try to take, there's this. Also, I'm threatening check. Okay, but instead, for some reason, I went for g4, and I'm just trying to anchor down my knights. Basically, I knew that I was worse here, and I thought, okay, maybe this is my best chance of survival. I didn't spot this idea. So after this, my opponent would have had to play g6. Like, come on. I'm just losing a pawn there, it feels like. Right? Okay, so basically to play queen g4, I don't really regret not playing that move. I had to spot that. I have this, and after this, I have this, right? So I don't think I can be hard on myself for missing that. And here I put my queen on f3, just trying to get something on the king side. Takes, and yeah, here I actually got a decent position, but it's kind of tricky. Okay, so I think I lost this game on my own because here it's tricky because my rook is still in the corner. So the computer wanted me to play rook here. After the knight moves, at least I get a pawn, but this just feels dangerous for me because like my bishop is undeveloped, my rook is undeveloped. So I ended up going this way, but I guess rook here was a waste of time because now we're just trading rooks anyway. So I think I was better off just developing my bishop even. Maybe not in that diagonal. Even here, I think. Yeah, this would have been better off. Because here I can even castle. So Yeah, this move cost me the game because I managed to get back into the game, but my opponent just has too much in this position. I try to hold on, but here, actually, I remember this moment. I actually regretted doing that right away. I thought maybe doing this first was correct. Okay, my rook was hanging. This doesn't do anything, right? So I just lost the pawn there. So the computer wants takes. We have 3 pawns each, right? And I attack this side. So basically, in this game, I was under a lot of pressure. I was worse from the opening, so it's kind of hard to get over that losing mindset. So I ended up just blundering a pawn, and like this is worse for me as well. I'm not saving this. Oh no. I think I remember this game. I remember thinking that I might have saved it. Wait, did I resign here? What happened? How did I lose this game? Black is victorious. I think I lost on time. Then this is the last move of the game. Black wins on time. Oh, I tried to go for this. Yeah. Yeah, so I was actually winning here. Then I made the move a few seconds too late, I guess. So yeah, for some reason chess.com kept the move. Now this is tricky because I have this as well. And if they takes, well, it's a race and I'm first. So, and this is also checkmate. So I managed to save the game, but not really save the game because I lost on time. All right. This was the next game that we played. I was black. So I'm gonna flip the board black. So this is going to be a long video because I'm gonna go over all 30 games, I think, or at least I think that's what I'm gonna do. So it might be 3 hours long, or something. Right. So e4, c5. We're back in the we're back in the Grand Prix attack. Knight f3, bishop g7. Okay, so the computer wants me to go bishop g7. Like I said, I haven't faced this line in a while. And after castles, now you go knight takes, and oh, you play this in this position, right? So basically, this transposes to something similar to the first game. Yeah, the first game that we played, we got a similar position. Okay, and here the idea is you just ignore the pawn. We're gonna win it back later because after knight takes, the knight will be defended by the queen. All right. Apologies if I'm struggling to maintain my energy levels. So let's see. Sometimes you get tired of talking, especially if you're not somebody who likes to talk a lot. But yeah. So this is how the game went. Knight f3, and here I took the knight right away. I guess it's not much of a difference because I still played d5. I still played a6. But here my opponent took. Still played a6. I still got bishop g7. And I'm a pawn down, but I'm gonna get the pawn back, which I do right away. And here I'm slightly better according to the engine. Now here I was skeptical of this. Takes. I was thinking, do I really want to give up my dark squared bishop? But I guess here it's fine. Okay. The pawn is hanging as well, but I'm not even sure if I would take it. Especially since I haven't castled. This bishop is still on c1 and this rook is out of the game. Like it just feels a little bit scary. So instead I just castled. Now I should have gone for b5. The only reason why I went for b6 is because I know that in the Grand Prix, especially in the bishop c4 lines, you go for b6 and not b5. But that's only because you don't get to play a6. So I should have remembered that. And yeah, I think this game ended in a funny way. Maybe this, I'm threatening mate here actually. So he prevents that. I develop my pawn for some reason because it was hanging. Maybe I should have just ignored it. And here, that this is basically just losing a pawn. Like, and I do remember regretting this bishop move after playing it, but just went back. And I remember this position. I forgot that the pawn was hanging because I usually play b5. So that's the only reason why I allowed this. Otherwise, allowing his rook to get active. And actually, I remember that this just gave me a big headache during the game because now the computer wants me to just trade the rooks. Like, don't let this rook stay here. But I went here, going for the attack. And this rook ended up annoying me actually later on. So you see that here after the knight moves. What is he going for here? Okay, I guess he's just trying to defend this position. I'm trying to bring my rook back into the game. I knew I could take the pawn, but I thought I was slightly better. But still, I thought it was better to develop my rook. Okay. Also, I'm keeping in mind that if I move the queen, this bishop is hanging. So I take the pawn now that I'm kind of satisfied with my position. And I bring my bishop back just in case. I don't want to hang it. And here after knight takes, this is a very crazy position, right? Knight takes. I was afraid of pawn takes because for some reason, I thought this was mate. Or I thought this would lead to checkmate. Like, I just didn't like this position. Okay, and here, what would I have done? Like, what's the winning strategy? I guess here my opponent is forced to go for this because this is checkmate. But then, as you can see, I actually had more sufficient time on the clock. I don't know. I thought during the game, I thought queen takes pawn is checkmate. Right, so I must have hallucinated that. So I took with the queen. But then I saw that I'm going to have some crazy tactics here, here, and here. So he took there and ooh, I should have doubled right away. Crap. Okay, but then here, this doesn't work because there's this move. I can't even play rook here because the queen takes. So I missed so much in this position. But lucky for me, my opponent took first and gave me the check, and I just blocked. And this is deadly because now no more checks, literally no more checks, no more useful checks, because my bishop controls that square. And if the queen moves, this is literally mate. So here my opponent, my opponent played, no, this move wasn't played at all. So delete from there. Yeah, my opponent resigned here. Did they resign? Or lose on time? It just says black is victorious, but I think my opponent resigned because they realized that they were losing. So at this point, we had played. I won the no against this guy. They won the first game. I won the second game. They won the third game, and I won the fourth game. So it was 2-2 basically. So, but I do remember that I ended up winning the match. Um, and then for some reason, the computer made me black once more, which is kind of confusing. Like, I was supposed to be white. So, we're gonna. Wait, what did I do? Orientation black, save chapter. Okay. So now with black, I was having more luck with black actually in this match because I'm more familiar with the Grand Prix, and I was having worse luck with white. And here I decided to go for this. Like, just look out the bishop. I didn't take the bishop right away. I wanted to try something different. And I know that in these positions, white is fine because they get to play this move d4, right? And it comes with tempo. Computer wants me to take with the pawn, but like usually I'm just not comfortable locking in my bishop willingly like this, so I prefer taking with my bishop. Because in chess, a move is only good if you know how to follow it up. And this, they took there and I took their bishop, and I didn't want to take there because I thought if I allow sorry, takes, then takes, they get more pawns in the center. So like I just let the position sit like this. Develop my knights, and here I recognize that oh, I actually hang the pawn. So I took, and they took. I played b6, which is the normal move, and this time around it was the correct move, and I traded because I don't want to deal with any complications, and I attacked the pawn. I also saw that this pawn was hard to defend, and that's actually true. I'm not just using stockfish. I do remembering this. I do remember seeing this during the game, so that's why I played bishop a6. Otherwise, the bishop, I'll just put the bishop in b7. So bishop a6, rook here, and now that pawn is lost. Take with the rook, double up, and they also blunted a fork because this rook and this rook forked. And here, some people would take the rook, but why allow this? The fork isn't going anywhere, so I just played h takes, and they still have to deal with the fork. This doesn't do anything, it's a one move threat. I just bring my rook up, and now I get to win the rook trade off, and this is an easy game to win, basically. And here I think my opponent resigned. So after this game, the score was 3-2. So I was happy with that. Now we played another game, a fourth game, and this time I'm white. And guess the result. I lost the game as well. So this guy was lower 1600s, and I had just made 1706, I think, in our first game, right? In the first game, I was 1700. No, I think I was 17 or something. I don't remember. I think I was 1700. No, I might have been, yeah, just 1700. Okay. And we are right here. Game 10, game 11. We're on game 12. Okay. So I start off with e4, c5, knight f3, and again, this time around, I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna play this normally. I'm gonna play this like a normal knight off. That's what I thought in my head. Okay, this is just a normal knight off. And then my opponent plays bishop b5, and I'm like, wait a minute, this is a normal knight off. So I'm like, okay, I didn't want to deal with this, but I guess it's fine because this pawn is also hanging. Like, sometimes when you think you're playing the opening wrong, you just don't see the tactics at all. So for some reason, if I had seen that after takes and the knight takes, I can even take the pawn, I would have gone for this line. The computer says I also have this move, and if takes, there's takes. Bishop, the rook has to go there. There's check, takes. So I should be better in this line, but instead, because I didn't see all that, I went for bishop g5. And here, I remember this game really, really well. Right? I'm thinking, okay, my opponent has played a weird opening. I don't know what's going on in this opening. So I don't see that the queen is hanging. That's like, but I'm sure we've all been there. Like, we all don't see tactics sometimes. And for some reason, I don't take the queen because this is just a free queen. I noticed that after making the move bishop takes, and I was frustrated with myself. So takes. And here I try to go for the trade. Now it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pawns versus 1, 2, 3. I'm down a pawn. But the position is equal because I guess my bishops become more active, and these pawns are double. They aren't impressing anyone. But if black can get f4, manage to trade, right? Let's say f4, they manage to trade, win the pawn back, and get these two connected pawns, they should be better. So here my advantage is I'm guessing my advantage is the pawn structure and the piece activity because black's pieces are still inactive. That's why the position is 0-0s despite me being down a pawn. Right. And here I played this inaccurately. I'm sure even a move like bishop c4, bishop c4 isn't fine. But I'm guessing this would have been better than what I did, which is I went for g6 or g3 rather. And during the game, my reasoning was okay. The rook is gonna go on g1, so let me just get rid of this idea right away. I think I thought the position was so equal that I had time to do that, but maybe this was the better move. Yeah, I think this is the more practical move that I should have gone for. And I did consider this, but I went g3 and I put my bishop here and I brought my rook towards the center and I brought my king towards the center and I thought in my mind I thought I was just gonna double rooks and I was going to be fine. Like take more space on the queen side and attack the rook. Like I didn't realize that I was in danger until my opponent made this move and I'm like, oh no, I'm losing a pawn. Basically this whole time I didn't realize that there's these there are these tactics. That's why I was playing this very passive. So I played this game non-energetically, ended up losing a pawn, and yeah, this was just really bad. So I ended up losing more pieces, and frustration all around. So at this point, it was like 3-3. And then we played another game. I would play. So this is a very strange match where people like you're winning with black and losing with white. Normally, it's usually the other way around. Like you're favored when you have white, but this is what kept happening during this match. Okay, so yeah. Anyways, for some reason, I moved to another tab from my OBS. But yeah, another game, another Sicilian, another Grand Prix. And this time our opponent goes with bishop c4, which is the other option. Now you can take the pawn, but this just leads to complications that I am unaware of, and the position is still equal in this line. So I'm pretty sure I didn't even notice that the pawn was hanging. I'm like, okay, I'm just gonna play e6 because that's the move. And here the pawn is actually hanging. I didn't take it for some reason. I'm thinking of going a6 and b5 and like this is what happens when you shut off your brain and just go for the normal moves. But yeah, my opponent develops their knight, and at this point I was happy. I think I felt that I was the slightly better player, and my opponent kept getting me in the opening because of the difference in our rating. So I was more than happy playing equal-ish positions. Now I get to play b5, then takes, a bunch of trades. I have the healthier pawn structure. And yeah, bishop b7. Now my opponent just hang a pawn, and like he could have taken this pawn, but the knight moved somewhere. He could have also taken this pawn. For some reason I was in a hurry to develop my pieces, and actually maybe I was getting tired because this was late during the night, and I didn't even notice that my pawn was hanging, which is something I think I would normally. So yeah, now I moved my knight for some reason. Instead of just taking the pawn, I wanted to take the bishop. But then here I realized that okay, if I take, I just fix this pawn structure, but I thought I was also gonna win this pawn, so I take the pawn. And now my opponent, I was happy to go for the trades because wait, okay, I could go for the check, but I didn't want any of this in this position. I was getting frustrated with myself, I think. I was frustrated that I played this move, so I just wanted to trade the pieces off. My opponent doesn't go for that, which allows me to just chase their queen around, and yeah, I get this position. This is a bad move, by the way, because there's no lift for my queen, which is why I went h6 in this position. I'm trying to play rook b1 next, and which is what I did here. Now my opponent just hangs a pawn, and yeah, this is a crazy dynamic position. I, I go for check, and I go for this move. And the main reason for this is I actually spent quite some time, I think, thinking about that move here. So I had already planned that. And the reason why I went for this is I thought it was a tricky idea because if my opponent takes, they can't do that by the way, they just hang mate because after you block, that's checkmate. So they can't take my queen. So my opponent takes, there are no discoveries, which is the good thing. And here I brought my other rook into the game. Now I'm threatening takes. And the computer wants queen takes because it also defends the rook. Neither one of us saw this, especially in a time scramble. So my opponent moves their queen. I take, and I take the pawn, and here my opponent froze, and I won on the clock. So now the match is 4-3. Let's look at the next game, right? The next game, finally I'm white, and finally I decided to go for something else. So e4, c5, knight f3, a6, and I'm like, oh no, I went for the exact same thing. Takes here, here, e5, here, bishop here. And here I was hoping for the same. I was hoping for queen a5 again because I remembered that, okay, my opponent hanged their queen. But that doesn't happen. I take, I double their pawns, they take, I block with my knights, and in this position at least I got to activate my pieces. A castle, I'm down a pawn, but I thought I should be fine because of all the counterplay I'm getting. The computer just wants me to attack the rook. Let's see, if I attack the rook, I could even just take the pawn. So I didn't see that for some reason. So instead, I decided to develop my other pieces. I bring my rook in the center, and this was too slow apparently. I centralize my bishop, and yeah, here I just blunder a fork basically. I didn't even bother to play queen here. Like, but anyways, I played a turbo game. But for some reason, my opponent, after doing this and this, wait, I thought that let's see, in this position, I thought that he should have just taken the rook. To be honest, this was the easy win. But then my opponent became went too fancy and like taking this, like taking the knight, and they win the queen. But like, come on, this doesn't do anything because now I fix my pawn structure, and I'm the first to arrive on the c file. So check, yeah. In this game, I just won a bunch of pawns basically. I actually think I had trouble converting this as well because I think I allowed my opponent to. No, okay. I didn't allow them to promote. I think I did. In this position, the computer wants me to go here. The idea is if this, wow, and if this, I take. So I didn't see that. I should have maintained contact with the A pawn, but for some reason I moved my rook because I'm an idiot. Okay, so this is an important part to note. Like, stay on the pawn that's in front because from the other pawn moves, you can take it. No, don't just stay there because if you stay, okay, if you stay on it this way, okay, I guess this is the easiest because now you have all sorts of ideas. If this, you could even do this because you're in time to go back. Okay, so I guess that's instructive. But for some reason, I went after the pawn, and here I just gave away counterplay. This in this position, I thought only black has to worry about losing because my king is safe. I'm not gonna get mated, and I have 3 connected pass pawns, and my rook protects everything, and is also protected by the pawns. So, and here my opponent lost on the clock. So I'm guessing not the best way to win. And at this point, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 games between us. I think I'm up 2 games now. I was up 2 games here. So at this point, I started getting comfortable. The next game I played on the white side. Now I remember, okay, it's a can Sicilian. Let me try something else. And turns out this is the main move, right? Well, there's c3, c3, d5. This resembles an Alapin, and I don't play the Alapin. So instead, I went for c4. And with c4, at least we end up in an accelerated dragon. We've already looked at this. Here, black has a number of options. Like I said, there's this. I'm guessing this. Normally in the Sveshnikov, you go here, but black has already played a6. The computer wants this. This takes, and the knight here. Okay, so this is interesting. And I'm guessing white wins the pawn back because this and this. We try to defend this. I don't know if I would have found all these moves during the game, but my opponent doesn't do any of that, and we end up in a standard accelerated dragon. So I'm pretty sure that I faced an accelerated dragon in some of the games. Previous games already looked at that. And here I'm going for the same setup. Queen d2, rook b1, but here I went c4 instead. And I think the reason why I went for that is, I mean c1, I recognize that this file was more important. Rook b1 in the other cases, like maybe you have plans of pushing the pawn or something. But in this situation, since the queen hasn't yet been developed, right? Yeah, I think the difference is the queen hasn't yet been developed. There isn't pressure here immediately, so I can afford to do this. Now I just defend and I'm happy in this position. I moved my king here because of flashbacks of the other game where my opponent gave me a check and won my bishop. So I just protected my king, and here, after trading, yeah, so this was a nice little move here because this was basically losing for my opponent because if they take, the queen is lost. But if they take, I have this intermediate move. And now I'm just up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm up a pawn. But for some reason, here I'm just trying to, okay, like, why did I give up this pawn? I thought I was gonna lose the pawn anyway. Maybe I shouldn't have given up the pawn. I thought I was still better, and my logic was okay. I'm just gonna bring my king closer. I'm gonna win that pawn, and I'm gonna come back, and this should be easy for me. So the winning strategy turns out is bring the rook back, and I'm guessing even this is okay for me. Just support the other rook, and I should be fine here. But instead, I brought my king up, realized it's not doing anything, and I allowed all this counterplay. And here I'm actually worse. Wait, check here, check here. This is checkmate. But my opponent didn't see that, and instead they made this move, which allowed me to just, okay, maybe they should have taken there, but yeah, basically I equalized, and it was king and pawn versus king and pawn, and my opponent gets the opposition, so I can't do anything here. And the game ended with a stalemate. Yeah. After I saw that my opponent knows the technique, I just went for stalemate. And so I'm still a few games up. Black, or it takes a black. And for the first time, I lost the game as black in this match. Wow. Okay. So my opponent went for the Smith-Morra gambit. So after e4, c5, d4 takes, c3 takes. And normally I play the setup with d6, e6, and knight c6. So my opponent goes bishop c4, which is the main move. I go e6, knight f3, I go knight c6. Here I go knight f6, like knight f6 and bishop e7, because bishop e7 is the main move, but they transpose because I play knight f6 on the next move anyway. So knight f6, and here I'm just better here, right? Wait. The computer wants me to take with the king because I have to check here. I guess the idea is, oh, this is quite unpleasant though, because my opponent gets this. Okay, I get it. I'm just up a pawn basically, but that was hard to spot. So next time maybe I will note that the immediate e5 after takes, or if I wasn't sure, I might have just gone. No. The computer doesn't like this. If I take like this is a problem. Okay, so I took with the knight instead, and a6. Okay, the computer wants this right away, and now my king is just awkward there. So I should have played the immediate knight c6. I didn't see that. My position wasn't bad here, I guess, but yeah. So I'm starting to wonder, why did I lose this game? Because I was defending so well. And my idea from the start was, oh, okay, I brought my bishop back. I'm gonna trade. And the moment my opponent denied the trade, I recognized that I have this counterplay. And this is also a nice trick, because if you go for this, I'm just gonna take your rook. So instead of that, I checked. Computer wants me to take, but then that allows check. Yeah, the issue with me is I didn't calculate all this. And the idea is, if you do nothing, check. This is checkmate. Wow. Okay. So maybe if it was a rapid game, I would have spotted that. But instead, I didn't. And I was so worried about my own king safety. So instead, actually, I still played a decent game. I have to check, takes. Here, I wanted to trade, but and this, I don't understand why my opponents keep doing this. In the other game, I put my queen here, my opponent took, and I was able to correct my pawn structure, put my rook on the a file. And here you're not supposed to take, because once you take, you give me connected pass pawns, but my opponent took, and here the pass pawns are rolling. Yeah, and I guess I just didn't know the technique, the winning technique. I went the wrong way. I should have gone up. And the moment I went here, I realized it also. So I should have gone up. I think I was afraid that these pawns were gonna queen because they're connected. But I should have realized that I can't go here, because the moment my king steps on the c file, the bishop, the rook takes the pawn. So this is my only chance. So I'm just pressing the space bar, going for the computer moves. I should have realized that this was my only chance. And now my rook is fast enough to stop the pawns. But unfortunately I didn't, so now the score deficit was down to 1, and here I think I resigned because there's nothing I can do. So now there's a 1 game gap between us. And this is another game, and then this game I went for d4. I didn't want to deal with the straying Sicilian, so I went for d4. I wanted to go for the Jobava London. I haven't really played the Jobava London, but I played a little bit at some point on a different chess website though. So I know some of the lines. I also have like a study on it here on Lichess. By the way, if anyone is watching and they would like to have access to my studies, you can just message me on Lichess and I'm sure to add you. Also, just subscribe to the channel. Cause yeah. Anyways, my opponent went for this bishop b4 line, e6. And this is one of those lines that I do not like because we get these trades, like I'm just not very familiar with it. The computer wants knight d5. Yeah, I think this is the main line. And you take like this. You could also take with the knight, but this is one of the lines of the Jobava London that I do not like. Um, so yeah, e6. Opponent went for e6. The computer also wants queen d3. And after d5, a6, bishop back. You can even just play e3. Okay, so sometimes Jobava London can be tricky because of transpositions. But here I went for e3, and after takes, like, now I have to castle kingside. Unfortunately, I really wanted to attack my opponent on the king side, so I played bishop d3, which is the normal move. I didn't want to play knight f6, so I ended up playing queen f3 because I know this is an idea in some lines, but it doesn't quite work here because of the immediate e5. Still, my opponent didn't play that, and I got to expand on the king side. I should have played e5, but I didn't also. So I really wanted to go for the pawn advances. So yeah, here this pawn is hanging. The bishop and the knight are controlling that square. I protect the pawn. And here I thought I was slightly worse, but not too badly. So I wanted to go for some trades. I bring my knight over to the king side. And in this game, I sort of started to understand that my attack isn't really there. But still, the only way I can maintain this game because of my weaknesses is to just go for it. So I tried to solidify my bishop, also contact between the king and the pawn. So that was more of a defensive move. My opponent went back. I pushed the pawns, traded, pushed more pawns, and now my position is great because after king here, the moment my opponent took, I recognized that okay, I can take back, and here this is just winning for me because it's gonna be check, and mate is coming soon. So yeah, my opponent resigned in this position. So the one game I played with Jobava London, I actually won. All right, so I switched things up, and then in this game, let me change the orientation. Apologies for that. Okay, in this game, this was just a normal. Now my opponent didn't go for the Grand Prix. He played a normal. This is a normal Sicilian. Okay, so the other game with Bishop c4 was also a normal Sicilian. It wasn't a Grand Prix. Right, so Bishop e7, b5, and we've already seen this. I think the difference is here I played Queen c7, but yeah, Bishop. And now my pieces, all my pieces are active and I have no problems here. My opponent played this a bit passively, so I get to centralize my rooks. The reason why I played rook e8 is sometimes if you're not careful, your queen can't move because this bishop could hang. So I decided to defend that and then go for the bishop once more. And here takes, this takes. I just traded everything. And here I'm winning because like here my opponent can't just take my, sorry, here I'm better, knight here. So this move was inaccurate. The computer wanted me to take the bishop after queen takes. Okay, the idea is now I'm maintaining the pawn, right? But I didn't want to trade my bishop for the knight, so that's why I was blind to the tactic. So again, I missed the tactic. And now after knight here, I just wanted to trade this bishop and get rid of the pin. It's egoish, but sometimes I don't mind getting those types of positions. And here, there's this, right? And also this pawn is hanging. So I ended up being better because of the hanging pawn. And here, I'm guessing my opponent lost on time. I'm guessing. Yeah, what on time. Right. But I still had the better position here. And now the lead is expanding, and in this game, I realized that the way to punish my opponent's setup was with c4. So I went for this line once more, and we got another accelerated dragon, except with the early queen a5. And here, the computer just wants this queen goes back, and I'm guessing I can just. I would never play this move. I'll probably play this, and then after let's say castle, I'll also castle. Go for the same idea, basically. Sorry, this. Right. But in this position, I just played f3, bishop e7. So I played this like it was a normal accelerated dragon. And here I went a6 because the queen is here. They can attack it with b4. So after takes, the queen slid over to the other side of the board. But okay, the computer wants this to prevent the bishop from coming here, but we're not computers, so I decided to centralize my knight like I did in one of the other games. The idea is after takes, this rook goes onto the c file, right? Also, this threatens check. Okay, my opponent takes, and I take with this pawn. No, I don't want this because this pawn structure just seems kind of weird. So I went for this. My opponent took, and okay, here I just stepped out of the diagonal just in case. Also, in case of any ideas of uh, bishop h, bishop h3, I can just take. So I stepped here because I couldn't with the pin. So now there's no more pin. Right now, I develop my rook, and now I'm ready to just start attacking. He brings his queen there. I bring my rook. I activate my rook. And here I just traded. I figured why not, and I played this move. I don't want to allow I don't want to allow g3 because I can't take because of the pin. So after g3, I would have to play like h3. So instead, I just played g3 myself. This doesn't do anything because I can just move my rook. So he has no attack literally. The only way for him to attack me is if we were to do this and this. But even then, I can just bring my rook up or bring this rook down and defend this pawn. So now I just advance my pawns. I have this nice pawns. One of these is going to become a passed pawn. So here I just take the pawn. He hangs a pawn. Apparently that wasn't the best move. The computer wants me to just stay put, but I took the pawn. It's a free pawn, and I thought I was still better. And here I push the pawn, allowing. Oh, okay. So this whole maneuver was incorrect, I guess, because I should have gone here, but then I was losing this pawn. Right. So in this position, maybe that's why the computer wanted me to play like this, because the queen doesn't get to infiltrate. Okay. So I missed that. By taking this pawn, I allow his queen to infiltrate. And basically the position is now more or less equal because he gets to win my pawns. Here I hang a pawn, I hang another pawn, and this is just an equal endgame. But the good thing about this endgame is I have the advantage because I'll be up a pawn, right? These are double pawns, and I'm also going to win this pawn. My opponent decides to defend that pawn. I win this pawn, and this was a blunder. So now I'm up 2 pawns, and wait, I'm up 1 pawn. Sorry. So in this position, I was down a pawn. Okay, I was actually down a pawn, but I would win one back. Right. Now my opponent blundered by letting me win another pawn. Alright, so I'm out a pawn, we trade, and now I win another pawn, and generally you wanna I was playing prophylactically. I don't wanna allow his rook to get in for no reason. So I just stop it this way. But now I can give a check preventing his king from infiltrating again. Now I go back, I have this check, I'm winning another pawn, and here I can afford to give up some pawns because my opponent isn't fast enough to stop the pawns. And just like that, I won this game as well. So at this point, my lead was sort of extending. I was happy with my results, and I ended up losing the final game that we played. But I think I played, how many games did I play with Dr. Dinkenstein? It's kind of funny name because Magnus also has a name like that. Okay, so it's 13 games, right? From game number 7 to game number 20. So we played 14 games. Right. So at this point, I was content with my lead. So we got an Alapin. Oh, sorry, this is an Alapin. And I'm black, so orientation black. Right. The reason why I lost this game, I remember, is I think I was getting tired. It was late in the night. And for some reason, I just blundered this. Like, there's a reason why you play d6. I never make that mistake because I'm a knight of player. I always play d6 here. For some reason, I didn't play it here. And also, I think it's because my opponent hasn't been playing in the normal, like in an orthodox manner, this whole match. So I messed up there, and I'm just worse out of the opening. But here, with that move, I'm fine again. But I have to play knight c3, but I don't now. d5. If I take, queen takes, d5. Okay, I'm gonna have issues developing this bishop, like this pressure in my position. But after this, takes. Here, this was equal. Takes. Actually, my position wasn't so bad after all because I survived the opening. And here I blundered with knight c3 because I couldn't do this because of this. So I realized that after making the move. So I made a simple blunder. And after this game, I think this was the last game I played on that particular night. And yeah. The next games I played on a separate day, so at this point we're left with 10 other games that I played against other people. So I pretty much spent the last 13 games, 14 games rather, analyzing games that I played with the same person. But I hope this was instructive, and the one good thing about this is that we played similar openings like the Grand Prix several times, so this might be instructive on those particular openings. So yeah. Alright. Alright, so let's proceed. Um so after those two long matches, excuse me, I was back to 1703. Not too long, but like 2 long matches and a couple of games here and there. So I basically played those games against 3 people. I proceeded to play some more Blitz the next day. I was trying to solidify my 1700 rating. And let's look at the games. We're going to start off with this game that I played against QLY81. Okay. So this started off with e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6. So this is a normal Italian. Black responds in the normal way. I play c3. This is the main line. We've looked at it multiple times. And here the main move is castles. But just like in the previous game, I played bishop b3. but it's going to transpose anyways. So we get this, and now my opponent plays bishop g5. Now, here my plan is the same as before. I'm going to kick away the bishop. Sorry, the knight goes on f1, and after that, excuse me. Oh, okay, I was in the wrong. Turns out I was analyzing the wrong game. Unfortunately, my leeches hadn't loaded, so I think I was looking at the same game that I played previously. But anyways, yeah. Anyways, let's proceed here. E4, C5. Okay, this was an Italian. Sorry, this was a Sicilian. D4, and this is now a knight off. Looks like a knight off. But no, my opponent plays G6, so this transposed into the what do we call this? The dragon Sicilian. So this is an ordinary dragon where black doesn't start with knight C6. So here the main move is bishop E3, followed by bishop C4, queen D2, castles queenside, and you push the pawns on the king side. So here I went bishop C4 first. Let's just I'm just clicking on the first line in table base, the main line, just to see what the main differences are. So this is the position that I wanted to get to, and this is the main line. All right, so that's the main line. I'm glad we could see that. Now let's go back to the game and see if there are any deviations. So the main difference is I started with bishop c4. My opponent played the normal move, and I didn't castle kingside. I went for a bishop e3, and apparently this is inaccurate here because I allow this move. And now queen d2, and after knight c6, black is better because of the pressure on the knight. Yeah, so basically, the knight is being pressured multiple times here, so I shouldn't have allowed that. But anyways, my opponent didn't punish me for that. So in other words, don't start with bishop c4. It's a bad idea. My opponent goes there, and I go f3, knight c6, queen d2, castles. I was waiting for rook c8 before I played bishop back to b3. Right here, my opponent took right away, and I take. And according to the computer, I have a slight advantage. But here, I then start my attack. Because the idea here is you go h4, and if black does nothing, we're going to go h5 after the knight takes. So for example, let's say black does this. We go like this, and if takes, okay, we could take there, but even something like this. Oh, okay, so the main difference here is that the bishop is here. But if the bishop was here, you want to trade this way. So here we can trade this way. And if the knight takes back, for example, the queen infiltrates. But here the knight would block, and it would be chased away. Or we could even sack the rook. So that's the idea. Now, I go h4. I'm trying to go h5. My opponent doesn't stop me, so I go g4. And here I went for g4 because the queen is now attacking this pawn as well, so I thought this was a bad move. But turns out, apparently this is okay because I still get bishop takes, and after this, if the knight goes back, I still get king h. I still get king h6, so I should have just gone for g4, but h5 rather, but I went g4 instead. And this is still fine. My opponent stops me from playing h5 in this position. So I took. The computer wants me to go here and trade queens. Oops. And here, if the knight goes back, I think the idea is that, okay, here I just get a comfortable position and black's king side is very weak. So that's the idea. But instead, I didn't go for that. I wanted to maintain my queens on the board, so I took, and after taking, takes, I switched plans. I just made sure there weren't any. I just made sure to tuck in my king here. And when the rook moves, bishop moves back, and here Okay, so the computer wants me to break open the position with this, but here I was thinking even takes, and okay, maybe this is fine because I get to bring in my pieces. The other rook could even go to G1. So instead of that, I decided to just centralize my bishop. At this point, I knew I was better, so I was like, you know what, I'm just gonna centralize. No need to take unnecessary risks. And as you can see, the time gap isn't that big. I have 2 minutes 18 seconds. My opponent has 2 minutes and 23 seconds. And here I continue pushing the pawns. Takes. Now I don't know why my opponent did that because now I have this strong knight that's uncontested here. And also I get an extra tempo because I'm attacking the queen. So in this position, my opponent slid the queen back to prevent knight takes e7 with a fork on the rook and the king. And here I just continue pushing the pawns. Computer insists on this move, but for some reason I thought it wasn't practical here. But I guess I would have kept trying to pry open black's position, and if I was ignored, okay. The sack works, I guess. King goes back, and here it's made soon because of rook g1. Okay, so even though I didn't go h4, something similar happened because I went f4 instead. Now the rook slid over to c5, and here I just played h4. So I'm trying to pry open the black's position. After knight takes, I took with the pawn, and after pawn takes, I brought my queen into the position. And here, this is a very strong position because my queen is attacking the pawn together with the knight, and also I'm threatened to take this pawn and take this knight. So here, black decides to bring the king forward, and here I just take the knight with check. And after takes, check, and this is checkmate because all the squares around the king are controlled. So this was a nice attacking game in the Dragon, Sicilian. And it's one of the reasons why I don't like the Dragon. I feel like it's very easy for black to go wrong because white sacks a pawn on the king side for an attack, so their plan is easy. And black needs to be very accurate. So if you mess up, and a lot of people mess up at this level, if you mess up, it's bad for you. Because here, let's see, the main move is 95, king here, rook here, and here black's position is much, much better, right? But the way the game proceeded, with my opponent trading the knights, I think that wasn't ideal because now my bishops are just way too active. And this is usually what happens whenever I face the dragon. I get a small advantage out of the opening, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing until I win the game. So it's one of those Sicilians that I like to see on the board. Great. So let's look at the next game that I played. Alright, my OBS keeps switching my tabs sometimes, so excuse me for that. But here, e4, e5, I had another game with white, and this is an Italian. How did I lose this? Okay, my opponent played in a non-standard way. They played an early a3, and usually in these positions, I could have gone castles and just ignored it, right? Bishop e7, and then e4, d4 rather, but in the Italian, if your opponent doesn't play actively, usually d4 is the correct move. So I went for d4 right away in this position. And after takes, I take with my knight. And this is just bad for black because now my queen is active and there's no way of attacking it right away. So I could even get a setup with knight c3, bishop e3, f3, and castles king side, queen side, and push the pawns this way. And black is too slow to meet my attack usually in these types of positions. So here my opponent decided to check me. I just blocked with my knights. And here, okay, so here I had this. Let's see, where is the knight going? The knight has, okay, the knight could go here, but that doesn't make any sense. The knight could also go back, but then I spotted this tactic. So the moment I spotted the tactic, I just went for it. Takes, and after takes, I take, and here I'm just much better. So I develop my pieces, I castle. I'm starting to wonder how I even lost this game. because my position just looks great. Okay, so here I'm advancing my pawns. I'm trying to pry open the black position. Oh, I remember this game. I went for this, but the mistake that I made is I was hoping for this when I played the move. And my idea is after takes, I was gonna like take here. But then I realized later on that the bishop just takes back. So maybe I should have gone for this. The computer thinks this is fine for me. Let's see, what's a move for black? If black does a nothing move, I don't think I would want to do that, but I double up and I have too many pawns to lose, right? Yeah, this should be enough compensation for white. So maybe I should have gone for this because I'm not losing this position. But the problem is, once I made this move and realized that, okay, this is my only option, I was a little bit stuck here. As you can see, I spent over 20 seconds on this move, and now there's a big difference on the clock. But I'm up 2 points. And here, I just ended up blundering my knight. The computer wants rook takes. How does this change things? Okay, with rook takes, of queen takes, we get queen takes, and rook takes. So I didn't see that. So the mistake that I made is I panicked because I didn't calculate the whole line. So I missed this one detail and I lost. Otherwise, based on how the opening went, I feel like I should have won this game. I was actually debating whether I take the pawn here. And then I calculated that I'm gonna take and then I'm gonna take and I'm fine. I just missed that. I missed this idea and it freaked me out a bit. So yeah, I just wish I had seen that here. The computer wants. This was the final nail in the coffin actually, because I could even go back. So I don't know why I decided to take that pawn. Here, okay, the rook can't come here. Like, this position is just good for me, but anyways, the two-move blunder cost me the game. So yeah, that's one of the very few games that I lost in the Italian. Let's look at the next game. The next game, okay. The orientation is black, so let's do this. Okay. Orientation black, save chapter. Right, so I'm just gonna flip the board because for some reason it's decided not to behave. Okay, so here my opponent goes knight f3, and these are some of the openings that I used to struggle with a lot because white doesn't contest the center, and sometimes in some systems I ended up playing an early e5, let's say if the pawn was defended, but then I don't play e4, e5 openings. So these days if my opponent does something offbeat, I prefer going for openings with c5 and d5 because against one d4 I play one d5. So that's another thing that you need to note. If your opponent plays something offbeat, make sure that if you're going to transpose, you transpose into something familiar. So these days I just go for knight f6, or sometimes I'll go for c6 if, just to get a solid approach. And here I get, okay, this is another thing. Since white isn't taking up the center right away, I have the luxury of playing bishop f4. Usually black doesn't have time to play this move and this move and this move and castles, or developing the knight here or here after playing maybe c3 or c5, then c6 or c5. But then because white is playing somewhat passively, I have the luxury of playing this move and I should be comfortable here. I play e6. Okay, here I should have defended the pawn, apparently. And I thought of that right after the move, but then I should have defended because of queen here. And yeah, playing b6 in these positions generally isn't a good idea, especially since I'm not fianchettoing shadowing this bishop. So I should have seen that, but instead, I really wanted to go for c5, so I played like this. Luckily for me, my opponent took, and I castled. So my opponent didn't pose any problems in the early openings. Here the computer is like I could have played c5, d4 rather. Sorry, I still make a mistake with the squares, and most likely, where's white moving the knight back? The knight might have gone here. Yeah, and this looks good for me. For some reason, I didn't spot that because I was still in opening mode. So sometimes dwelling too much in the opening stops me from seeing tactics because I'm just trying to develop my pieces. But anyways, I don't mind getting a comfortable position because I don't think I have chances of really losing here. And I develop my knight, I develop my rook, I slide my queen while protecting the pawn. Here the computer, where did things start going wrong for me? Okay, the computer wants this right away. So if because of this idea. So if a6, I have this trapping the queen. Actually, that's similar to what happened during the game, but I went for this, and it's one of the reasons why I really regretted going queen d2, queen d7 rather. Maybe I should have gone queen c1 in this position because knight e5 doesn't come with tempo anymore. But yeah, in this position, queen d7 protects the pawn, but this move comes with tempo. Anyways, also it prevents the knight from developing to d7. I move my queen, and here I finally spotted the tactic, and this is how the game was won. I won the queen, and just like that, I just traded off the pieces. I actually made things a lot messier than they should have been because I blundered this fork, but I was still winning and my opponent resigned. So this was a comfortable game where my opponent blundered their queen. Also, they didn't really play a combative opening to begin with. Alright, e4, e5, knight f3. Wow, I lost in an Italian. This will be interesting. Okay, we've already seen this multiple times, and here my opponent goes for the early a5, and here the main line is castles. Okay, the computer wants me. The main line rather is the immediate d4 because so black sort of wasted a move by going a5, so I have the luxury of going d4 right away. So, but I didn't do that. I developed my knight, and here actually we've seen something like this in another game. This is this is a familiar opening, but then I'm targeting this pawn, right? Here black supposed to go bishop g4, but they didn't. And this allowed me to develop my knight to e4. So here I'm better. Because the main line here is bishop g4 and h3 back there, and I'm gonna try to go for something like this. So bishop e7, and then I might even go for, sometimes you have ideas of going back to b5 so that you can take the knight and weaken this pawn. But here my opponent doesn't do any of that. I develop my knight, and here what did I play? I played d4. I could have taken right away, and I think this would have given me a comfortable game. Like even d4 here doesn't seem so bad. But instead of that, I played d4 in case my opponent has fallen asleep. I win the knight. So my opponent decides to go back, and here bishop g5. Normally I wouldn't play this move, but it's a tempo on the queen, and they can't play f7, f6 rather, because of the pin. So my opponent slides their queen. I push the pawn. And one of the things I struggle with in the Italian is when to go for pawn breaks, right? Do I want to trade or when do I want to trade? Like how should I convert the position? It's a bit tricky. Especially since I rarely get like a main line. Usually there's always a deviation somewhere. But here I decided to attack the knight because I didn't want to spend any more time than I already did here, 13 seconds. So the knight goes back. I prevent bishop g. Maybe I should have gone here right away. Oops. Oops. Made the same mistake twice. Okay. computer wants knight here. Why? After this, there's this. Okay, this. There's this. This. Yeah, this is like it's too complicated for me. So with queen here. Oh, okay. So that's too complicated. But maybe if I had time to calculate, I would have spotted it. But I develop my bishop, the last remaining piece. Push my knight. Here the computer just wants queen d2. Basically keep the tension. h4. Oh, and here takes. He can sacrifice because my knights are coming into the position. Okay, so maybe if I spotted all that, I think here keeping the tension helps me because if black were to take at some point and I manage to take back, okay, in this position it doesn't work. But let's say let's go back to the initial position with here. Here, if I play queen d2 and black took, even this is better for me. But yeah, because I just maintain the pawn and this pawn has a lot of support, so at the very least I might be able to weaken black structure. Right, but in this game I push the pawn to resolve the tension. Then I played h3 to stop bishop g4. And after f3, I actually spotted this, so I'm wondering how I lost this game because everything seems, because this comes with check. Did I lose this on time? Takes, because now I'm just better. Okay, this game became very strange and tactical. Ooh, I'm hanging my rook here. But none of us saw that. Hanging my rook again, none of us saw that. Hang my rook again. But then I managed to get my rook up there, attack the knight, takes, and everything is defended. So what happened? Oh, I didn't lose in time. I just didn't play it accurately. Here, I allowed black to... This is correct. I should have played this move. I thought of it the moment I moved my knight, because now black gets a much more solid position. Ah, so my biggest problem here is the knight. So I guess this is very instructive. I can afford to sacrifice my knight for the pawns because here this is easier to convert. So I guess I should have thought of that, but I was trying to keep both my knight and both my rook, and I ended up getting myself in some trouble because I wasn't seeing the way forward. As you can see, the computer wants me to put my knight here. And the way I played this, why didn't I put my knight here? This, even this is okay. I also get the check. But yeah, these positions tend to be scary. I can win a pawn, but for some reason I keep jumping in this game, skipping forward in this game. But what ended up happening was basically in time trouble, 11 seconds. Oh yeah, I allowed his king to get in, so I was afraid of this though. Oh, with that I get to win the pawn. This comes right. So this was just a case of being in time trouble and allowing his king to infiltrate. And here, this is a draw, but I lost on the clock. So that was unfortunate. What did I have done here? See, even a move like that is losing because this happens. and this happens, then this happens, yeah, and the king is gonna get there. Okay, so yeah, the right way to approach this is okay. This check this. Wow, this is very constructive. Check, the king goes back, my king comes in, and if this doesn't work because I take this, okay, the king comes in, wow, so the only way to save this is like here black basically has to promote to a knight. If they promote to a queen, this is checkmate. So black promotes to a knight, and if you promote to a queen now, there's check, takes, and this is just a draw. And if anyone could win this game, it's white. Okay, but yeah, I ended up losing on the clock because my opponent played faster than me, so it's one of those painful losses. So I offered them a rematch and they actually accepted it, which is quite interesting because now I get to have my revenge. Okay. For some reason, the studies are no longer flipping when I change the orientation. Orientation to white, now black. Anyways, I'm just gonna do flipboard. Now we get d4, d5, the queen's gambit, knight f6, knight c3, and here I used to play this move at some point, the semi-tarish, but then I often got some positions that were just, I felt like only white could win, so I stopped and I just go for the queen's gambit declined, because the bishop g5 we've transposed. So the semi-tarish happens if white develops the two knights first before the bishop. Because normal queen's gambit, this bishop comes out first, right? No. This knight comes out first, then this bishop before this knight, right? But here we transpose. h6 is the main move, but it's going to transpose e3. I play h6, and my opponent takes. If my opponent played bishop back here, the two most popular moves are the turtle cow with b6 or knight e4. So those are the ones that most. I'm familiar with the turtle cow just a little bit, but I haven't played it in a very long time. So these days I tend to go for the last because it appears drawish. The good thing is that here white has to play basically rook c1 and we get c6. White doesn't want to take here because this is one of the rare positions where, okay, the computer even thinks the immediate f3 is okay, but here I can also take my pawns. But later I get to play f4 and keep this pawn and attack on the king side. But that's not how the game went because my opponent after h6 took the knight, and now we have an imbalance. I get the bishop pair even though this bishop is passive. So rook c1 comes. I don't want to play c6, and at this point I was a bit lost because I don't normally face the exchange variation. So this is literally called the anti-title cow, and here I am playing b6, which is the move in the title cow. So hopefully I remember this. The main move is c6, bishop d3, knight d7, castles. All right. Okay, and in this position I even have c5. I think I'll most likely go for this. The reason why I struggled here is because I haven't played or looked at the title cow. If I was planning on playing the title cow, I'd probably known what the anti-title cow was. But yeah, but here I play b6, And here, this pawn is just, it's not doing very well. Also now it's like, what's the point of this move? This bishop is planted. Of course, sometimes you still get a similar position in the tattered power, but still, my opponent gets to develop their bishop. And here, I play rook e8 because I wasn't sure if I want to go bishop b7. This has actually been played multiple times. Bishop b7. Let's see, what's the highest rated game? Oh, it's like 1993. So yeah, this is an ideal. So I develop my rook, castles, and here I don't want to go bishop b7, so I went to bishop a6. And I was happy to see that because now after the trade, at least here I'm stopping knight b5, knight b5, and maybe I'm going to try to develop my knight somehow. I don't know. We'll see how the game went. But I knew that my position was worse. I go c6, develop my queen, push the pawn. I want this to happen. At least my position is more free. Like if we can just trade these pawns. At this point, I've already accepted that I might have to defend and then gain a pawn down or something. So instead, what happens is my opponent ignores that. They go back and they push the pawn because it's a weakness, and I don't want to deal with that. The immediate knight c6 is fine here, according to the computer, but oh yeah, I think I was hallucinating there, thinking that I couldn't, forgetting that I have a pawn. So instead of that, I just pushed the pawn forward because I thought it would be less weak. And here I'm happy with them taking because at least I get an open file for my rook. White tries to attack me on that side of the board. I bring my bishop back. The computer is like, just activate your rook, the engine. So maybe I should have gone for that because here I'm wasting time. Now I have too many weaknesses. So I was worse the whole game, and my only saving grace was counterplay on the queen side. And for some reason, my opponent fell into this little trap where I let my rook hang. All they had to do was move their rook. They took my rook, which is a very bad blunder because I take their rook with check and I win the knight. And here I'm just up material. Of course, this position isn't so easy for me because white also has the pawns and the knight, and my rook is kind of passive. But the good thing for me is I also have these pass pawns, which I end up blundering away in time pressure. See, I get that check and I push the pawn. And here I was relying on a simple tactic, which is mate in one, so my opponent missed that. So I got lucky in this game against MX Kue. So as I normally do, one of us offered a rematch so that we get to settle it in the third game. And here I'm white again. I start with e4, and my opponent plays e5 once more, and we get a bit of a similar position, right? We got something like this in the previous game. Takes, rook e1. Yeah, this is exactly the previous game, except I blundered this. Wow, okay, so I can't do this because the knight goes here. Anyways, this line for me is kind of tricky. So if the queen were to come here, Thurin's mate in one, so that's a big problem. And I'm gonna end up losing this knight. So yeah, I'm losing material here. So at the very least, beat down and exchange something. But yeah, this whole move with knight there was confusing. So I should have gone for this like I did in the last game and just taken there instead. But I took here, and lucky for me, my opponent ended up blundering this. Ooh. So I could have taken like this, and if queen takes, I get to win the bishop. So I'm up some material. Maybe the position of my knight is the one thing that's making me uncomfortable, but I'm sure black shouldn't be able to punish me right away. Instead, I went for this thinking I have some Nice tactics. And here I saw that this isn't good for me. So I might have to do this, but then this comes with check, so like this is just worse for me. Lucky for me, my opponent didn't see that either. So they took with the bishop. And after I move, the queen is just hanging. So now I win. I win the piece. I win another piece. And yeah, I attacked the queen, hang a piece. They didn't see that, and here I just attacked the queen and discovered attack on the queen. So here I'm just getting way too much material. So I decided to simplify things. No need to do anything fancy. The computer wants this, and this comes to check. I take, and yeah, if the queen moves, this is basically checkmate. This is checkmate, so that's nice. But I decided to simplify everything and just do this. And basically I'm up 3 pieces, right? Because I still have the rook there. So I won that match. Though my opponent didn't want another rematch, so that was it. Right, and then at 17:08, I played against this guy. E4, E5. Okay, here this is a Philidor. Now this was strange for me because I'm not familiar with this. This queen E7 move. According to the computer, just play knight C3. Keep the tension, play A4. And this is looking like a weird perk defense. A weird classical version of the perk. Except I'm not playing an early H3. But I decided to simplify things and just take, and play bishop c4. So here I don't know if this is theory or whatever. I'm just playing. But yeah, so this is how the game went. Develop my bishop, develop my knight naturally, castle, play h3, play a4. I know this is a familiar idea in like perk positions where Pirc, rather, it's called the Pirc, but it's PIRC. So yeah, I might try to go for bishop e3 and queen d2 at some point, and maybe put one of the rooks below the queen. But yeah, my opponent plays a5, so I go bishop e3. They develop their bishop, and here I was a bit lost in terms of what plan should I go for, right? It's the problem that I have in these positions. It's like, what do I do next? So the computer wants me to just bring my knight over to the king side. So yeah, maybe that's a nice idea. And if something like this, we get this. But instead, I bring the other knight over. I'm thinking of doing this. Put the knight there and bring the queen. The computer wants f3, and after this, okay, so that I have a square for my knight. So basically, I did one of the worst things in the position because I just helped them. And here I went back, and I think I blundered my queen in this game. Computer wants me to step back right away, but after this, takes. Queen g3 was the only move, and after this, maybe there's this. So I'm wondering, what's the difference between this and if I had played this right away? Okay, this isn't as dangerous because it doesn't come with temples, and I get to play h4. Okay, so that's kind of interesting. If the knight moves, I can even play g3. Okay, so that's interesting. Alright, so yeah, the way I lost this game is I got my queen trapped. The moment I played, it was one of those positions. You play queen f4 and then you realize right away that your queen has no squares. So yeah, this was just lost for me. And in typical fashion, I offered my opponent a rematch and they accepted. Now it was my turn to get on my revenge on the black side. Like I should have known that wasn't going to work. So here my opponent plays something weird, and like I said, I'm not gonna go for something with e5 because I don't play e4, e5. Sometimes if when you try to punish an offbeat position opening, you find yourself in something unfamiliar. So I just play c5 and d5, c5 and d5. Here I could have played e5, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna play this in the standard fashion, and I should have no problems, right? So it's basically I get some sort of reverse London, and this is an even better version because I already have c5 and knight c3. I didn't have to go c6 and knight d7. So most of the times, if white goes for some weird line, especially with one d4, this is the this is the setup that I adopt. It's like a reverse London, and this is usually very comfortable for black. So here I decided to take more space on the queen side, and one of the reasons why I did that is because I'm thinking based on white's play, they might want to go for like some crazy stuff on the king side. So I'm trying to, especially since it's a blitz game, I'm trying to get in my opponent's head and stop them from adopting a plan of castling on the queen side, basically. So now I feel much better about going for castles. And here I could have just gone back. Let's see. If takes, and this is much better for me because after castles, takes, rook e1. Okay. If the knight moves back, it spells trouble. Okay, so the pawn is being defended indirectly, but I guess took in the game. Usually keeping the tension is much better in this position. And the moment I did that, I knew that there was something wrong with what I did because now this bishop is in jail. And also, I didn't want to put it here because I thought about this move. It actually came to mind, but then I might have had to move my knight back and go for like f7 in some positions just to overprotect the pawn. And I didn't want to play bishop g6 because I was afraid of this, and then my bishop would just be pushed back. So I brought my bishop all the way back to h7. And here, yeah, this was a bad position for me because takes. Wow. Oh, they should have taken first. And now I'm just losing a piece because there's no way for me to protect the knight. So both of us missed it, right? If they had taken first, this knight is basically dead. Wow. Unless I do this and this rook is dead. So we both missed it. He took first, or they took first. And after this, I have some compensation because my pawn structure is okay. My pieces are, well, at least these two are better placed, and I'll be able to castle and attack on the king side. The computer wants me to go here, but I just went on c7, chase away the knight. Knight goes back, and I castle. Castles. And here the computer says I have an advantage. And here I was relying on one simple trick, which my opponent fell for, and that was takes. And now my opponent shouldn't take because after taking, I get to take, and now this spells danger. If they take, I win the queen. At least I get the better of that trade, and if they don't take, I take, and now they have to go for this basically. And it's going to be bishop and queen versus rook and rook plus bishop. But then my opponent is also going to have the worst pawn structure. Instead, they take, and this is just mate because the bishop controls the square. So I was happy to get my payback, and of course my opponent didn't want another game. And this is the second to last game that I played. Now I'm wondering how my rating went from 17-16. Okay, after winning this game, I gained 16 rating points. Is that what the computer is trying to say? But anyways, let's proceed. So e4, c5, we get a Smith-Morra gambit, and I'm sure we've looked at something similar already. e6, bishop e7, knight f6 transpose. And here, the moment my opponent played a6, a3 rather. I'm like, okay, this is rather strange because white wants to go for queen e2 and rook d1, right? Queen e2, rook d1, and they're going for tricks on this diagonal. Basically, they'll be able to push e5, and in most situations, black has to return the pawn because otherwise they're gonna be worse. So black has to find a productive way of returning the pawn or make some positional concessions. But here my opponent goes for this setup, which is just, it's like they're wasting time and allowing me to untangle. Now I get queen c7, and actually the moment I played this move, I realized that I can be attacked by the knight. But yeah, that wasn't such a big deal because after takes, I have this. And after my opponent pushes the pawn, right, maybe I should be switching off the engine for some of these because the engine just makes, it's obvious that instead of maintaining the pin, I can just take here because after the knight takes, I'm just up a pawn. So now, now I can play knight here because if the knight takes, I can take back with the rook and double. So we get this and takes, and here I don't even have to take with the pawn and split my pawns. I can just take with the queen and trade like this. So this was just me basically up a pawn, and for some reason my opponent decided to trade into an endgame. Now here I just have to make sure that this is a bit instructive. I'm gonna switch off Stockfish for this. Here all I have to do is make sure that white has no moves, and this b5 move is key because now I'm restricting the only move that white has with the pawns. So white has no pawn moves, which is a4. And here the king has to move because it has no better squares, right? All these squares are taken. If it goes back, I'm still coming into the position, but now you're farther away from these pawns. So white goes that way, I take, I defend, and from here it's just pushing the pawns. So maybe I shouldn't have played f6 actually, f4. Well, actually, no, I can't push this pawn because the king will just take like this. Right, so I push the pawn some more because if I push this pawn, the king can go back, right? But then this king would be in the square except this pawn is in the way, right? So it has to make two moves. So his king has to go for my pawn, and here this is very instructive because I have this, after this move, what you want to do in this position is you want to make sure that you want to sacrifice your queen for the two pawns and then promote this pawn. So this extra pawn is what's going to help. And in this position, I have this check. And the beauty of this check is the king has to go behind the pawn. Now I take the other pawn, and here it's basically just take and promote. So that's a simple win. So it was also aided by the fact that my opponent played a very strange version of the Smith-Morra. So the mistake that I made in the game was queen c7, but I'm always too eager to escape this diagonal in the Smith-Morra. But here I should have recognized that I can just go a6 and I should be fine. Okay, and then this is the final game. And this is the game that got me to my current rating, which is, what's my current rating at the moment? My current rating is 1732, I think. Not I think, but yeah. Okay, so, okay, the reason why it looks weird is because the order is different. I think I played this game before playing this game. Yeah, this game is supposed to be before this game. I know that because I'm looking at my chess.com account, and yeah, those two games have been interchanged for some reason. Right, so this was the last game that I played, but this was the game before that. It was e4, e5, another Philidor, and this is the main line. But I like to go for the system of bishop f4 because if I can just go for the pawn push, I usually go for that. The main line is something with bishop e2, and I've never looked at this actually, so I've never analyzed this. I used to play a setup with bishop d3 actually, much like the Sicilian, and then queen here and castle. And later I learned that here you're better off going for bishop f4 because you have the space, so why not go for this? This pawn has to move at some point, right? Because you might be thinking f4 is just staring at granite basically because the pawn is defended, but black is going to have to get the counterplay from the queen side, so this pawn has to move at some point. That's why this f4 square is fine. And then white castles, queen d2, and this is basically textbook. Takes, go back, and just castle. And here, just push the pawns. This is one of the reasons. This is the reason I love this system. So you just push the pawn and push more pawns, and here I'm just stopping any ideas of, because sometimes this becomes annoying, right? So if I play, let's say this, I get this. Here I'm basically saying my attack is faster, but I didn't want to allow any of that. Also, the other reason why I went for this is I felt that I couldn't be punished because my bishop and my knight control this square, so this pawn is going to be safe, right? My opponent develops and I just push the pawns, and here I made a fatal mistake. I should have taken, because after takes, if my opponent can't take actually because they're just losing a piece here, right? Yeah, here they're just losing a piece. And if they don't take, this comes with check as well, and I have nothing to worry about. I didn't see that. Instead, in my hurry, I just took, and now the position is equal, right? And here the computer actually wants me to go here and allow this, basically. But I was like, no, I didn't want that, so I took, and here I'm just much worse. And I knew that. But the moment my opponent did this, they went pawn grabbing, I knew that, okay, I should be fine, because now the computer wants f4. Now I get to develop my bishop, connect my rooks, and I get to keep some threats here. So I just push the pawn just to give my opponent some pressure. And now, after this, my rooks are connected, right? The computer wants me to play bishop here, but I was fine with this. I thought that was very active. And we trade, and now that was a bad move because my king comes in. So my opponent made one blunder. The crazy thing about these positions, because this pin made them very uncomfortable, right? The moment you move the rook away, it's made. So that's one of the reasons I played this move. It's annoying to deal with. So after takes, I have this. You have to do this according to the computer, but then check. And I'm just winning a queen because otherwise the king has nowhere to go. And I saw all this when I played this move. Unfortunately, my opponent didn't, and they just basically blundered their queen. So yeah, this is how, not this game, but since this was the last game, this is how I got to 1732 in Blitz. Right now, there's always a moment when you get to like 1700, which happened a while back. But then there's another moment where you feel like your skill level is on par with other 1700s, right? You're not just 1700 by rating, but you're also 1700 by skill. So right now, I can compete with other 1700s, and so far I'm happy with my results. So yeah, basically the tips I would say is the same thing. You want to balance your speed and your thinking. And with this video, I feel like one of the things that I've discussed in depth is the importance of improving your openings. Because in a lot of situations, in a lot of games, if you know the plans, especially in these Italian positions, if you can recognize that your opponent has made one inaccurate move, like here, I'm not really spending time. My opponent has 2 minutes 44 seconds. I have 3 minutes and 9 seconds because I know for a fact that I'm just gonna go for this idea, this plan. I have a plan, and there was one of the games that I lost in the period. Sorry, in the what's the game that I lost here? Okay, I won my last 3 games, but this game, right? One of the reasons why I lost this game is because of I wasn't familiar with the setup and I spent way too much time thinking, right? And so I didn't have an action. Not only did I spend time thinking, I didn't have a plan. If it was a rapid game, I think I'll be very comfortable playing this because if it was a 15 plus 10 rabbit game, I have enough time to figure out the right setup. But then if you don't have enough time, you won't. So knowing your openings to some degree is very important in Blitz. How much of the opening you should know, like I don't really know a lot. You should, I feel like you should know enough for your rating up. So know the openings to the extent that you'll be comfortable facing other people at that rating. You don't have to memorize lots of moves in the openings. And the other thing is what I said, you want to improve your general chess knowledge. So there was a game, I think I haven't displayed it here, but there was one game that I was analyzing at some point, and let's see, can I get that game? Let me see if this is the game. Okay, in that game I got a very nice checkmate. Let's see, can I find it? You guys can't see what's going on, but I'm on chess.com right now. Okay, this is the game. So I'm gonna take this game. Okay, I'm on chess.com. I'm gonna click share. I'm using another browser tab basically. I don't wanna have to switch like tabs to my other profile. Not another. I'm using another Chrome profile for my chess.com, so I don't want to switch. Okay, so I think you guys can see this. You guys can see this. Okay, this is an opening that I played and I was black, and there was this nice. This is another Smith Mora, which my opponent played inaccurately. It's a blitz game, so we're both very low on time at this point. And here I'm like, how do I convert this? How do I convert this? And I knew the plan right away because I saw something in a Daniel Nardisky video. So I like watching those Daniel Nardisky speedruns. And it was the exact same setup. Like it's a speedrun that he released like 2 weeks ago or something. And the rook went here. So I knew that this was an idea. The rook goes here. The king can't take this pawn defended by this pawn. You can't take the rook. You can't take anything. And whenever the king moves, you just promote to a queen. So improving your general chess knowledge through stuff like that helps. Also, like if you want, you can do tactics. I don't really do tactics that much myself these days, but every once in a while, when I do get the chance, like I'll do like a puzzle. What's it called? Puzzle Storm is the one I enjoy the most, where you have infinite amount of time to solve puzzles that progressively get harder. And then there's another one, it's like Puzzle Race. I don't know, you have like 3 minutes. So once in a while, like once a month. But then I'm not really a fan of them. But then I think that's another thing that you could do to improve your general chess skill. Like you can solve more puzzles as well, so that you're able to recognize patterns. Especially the quick ones can help with your blitz. So yeah. And the last thing is just playing more games. If you play more games, you're able to realize your weaknesses a lot more and you become a lot more familiar with some patterns. So yeah, this is the video that I had for you guys today. And it's kind of crazy to me because I recently uploaded a video of getting to 1600 blitz and it was hard for me to keep up at 1600, and now I'm just glad that I'm able to get to 1700, and I hope anyone who's watching this can learn something. Or if you have like any insights and you're higher rated, you can also drop that in the comments or whatever. And if you view my videos, feel free to like challenge me on chess.com at forensic39 or on lichess scope39, and just say that like you've watched my videos before. Then I'll be sure to accept your challenge. You can also message me there on those platforms. And yeah, if you'd like to have access to some studies, let me know as well. I have some studies on some openings that only I can see. So if you want access to those as well, some of those as a subscriber, you can alert me in my inbox. But All in all, this is all I had for you guys today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.